I had the pleasure of meeting both Elena and Igor a few years ago while our children played together in sports. And hearing it just a little bit about her story, I had a feeling that there was much to it and much that she should share on an occasion such as this. So without any delay, I introduce to you Dr. Elena Sevastianova.
Dear friends, you have come here a long way since you first got here. Everybody here has their own story, a story of hope, of disappointments, of joy and of pain. I don't know you individually, and yet I know that you are brave, determined, and open-minded. One day when each of us decided to change our lives and move to a new country, we had to face very similar problems. For many people, even the idea of moving to a different city or state is scary. It is very stressful and it takes a lot of energy to adapt to a new place. It is much more stressful for those who dare to move to a new country, to move to a new place with a different language, culture, and mentality. For most of us, the adaptation process started with overcoming a language barrier. The opportunity for easy conversation in the grocery store or with other parents at school, making jokes and casually exchanging news, became a very frustrating obstacle. Sometimes, after we were not taken seriously because of our childish English language skills, we didn't want to communicate with other people. The language barrier decreases our chances to make new friends, which is so important not to feel alone in a foreign place, limits our job network perspectives, and makes our adaptation long and painful. For the first generation of immigrants, it is a long and hard road. However, last week, the New York Times published interesting information. New research shows that children of poor newcomers to the United States, millions from the 1880s onward, have had greater success climbing the economic ladder than poor children born here. In other words, by the second generation, our children are doing quite well. It's a great motivation to work and invest our time and efforts into the education of our children, isn't it? Everybody here has their own story. It is an honor to be here today and to tell you my and our short story. Our story of immigration started in the 90s in Russia. We finished high school and passed exams to get to university. However, by the time of our graduation, the situation in the country became chaotic both politically and economically. We tried to settle down in Germany, but ultimately we couldn't stay there permanently, so we went back to Russia. The next country on our road was South Africa. I flew there with our 3-month-old son. It was a beautiful country, but also unstable, not one where you would like to raise your child. When we were about to return to Russia, my husband was invited to his postdoc study to Boston, and on August 26, 1998, we arrived to New York with our 1-year-old son, $400 in our pocket, and all the optimism in the world. We rented our first apartment, and the first furniture we got was a couch we found in the street. Later it became clear why it was thrown away. It had a very strong smell of cat urine. During the first fall in Boston, we discovered new things every day. I remember our first Halloween when we thought, oh, it's an evil holiday. Now it's one of our favorites. I remember our first Thanksgiving, when we were decided to go to buy turkey to be like everybody else, and of course discovered that all the stores were closed on Thanksgiving Day. We walked through the Harvard yard and saw students from a different world. It seemed to be a world of rich Americans with all the money and famous families. The world that seemed so unreachable for an immigrant. We just knew that in order to raise our son and get a permanent job, we had to work hard, learn English, and to adjust not only our mentality, but even our way of thinking. We grew up in the Soviet Union, the country with completely different scale of values. One of the most important values that we learned was the ability to work together, to share our responsibilities for either success or failure. The idea that responsibility for every step you make is yours and yours only was difficult to accept. However, this time you realize that the success is also yours and you don't have to share it with anybody. It gives you the new motivation to grow and move forward. Another thing that we missed was unconditional friendship. If you ever needed it, your friends supported you at any time of the day or night. In the country where nobody knew you before you came here in our 30s, we could rely only on ourselves. People around us had their own big families and friends they grew up with. We had to swallow our pride about the fact that nobody really cared about how bright, popular, and interesting we were before we came here. You had to be strong, confident, and flexible. At least these three things that helped us to adapt and succeed. After 3 years of hard work, my husband received his job in New Mexico. We moved to Las Cruces. However, we realized that the real hard work was just beginning. I had to start my career, and very soon I began my master's degree. 3 weeks after my graduation, I had my daughter, and when she was only 6 months old, I started my PhD. We came to the United States when we were both over 30, and we didn't have any time to slow down and relax before we took our next step. We didn't have any relatives around to help, and working late in the evenings and on the weekends for us was a very normal routine. We tried to teach our children the main lesson. If you want to succeed, you have to work hard and use knowledge and skills obtained from both worlds. We just didn't know any other recipe. We still don't know it. We encouraged them to take any opportunity to learn, to discover, and not to be afraid to be different. Because regardless, if you hide it or not, we are different. Different by thinking in one language and talking in another. Different by having two countries in our minds and hearts. One day, on November 13, 2015, when I was at work, my phone rang. My son said in a very tight voice, "Mom, I am accepted to Harvard." The first thing in my head was it was a joke. A joke. It couldn't have happened. We have never counted on anything like that. I thought about my grandparents and about my grandfather who dreamt about me going to university. About my parents, the best people in the world, who will never find out that their grandson was accepted to Harvard. And I cried. I still think a lot about what we have done by moving to the United States, what bridges we have crossed, what prices we have paid. We left our old parents behind, and this is the highest price we paid for our immigration. We gave our son the chance to go to one of the best universities in the world. We have become more tolerant and understanding of other people's problems. We still discover pros and cons of our immigration, of our reality, but it means that our life is a journey and not a destination. Congratulations again, not with your destination, but with the new stage of your life's journey. Thank you.